This is for the culture. That's right. Inventors of the fly, and you know it. That's right. Nurture the style and it's growing. That's right. This is poetry in motion. That's right. And we gon' keep it in motion, just like the ocean. Float like an MC, bringing you this dopeness.
Okay, so we're on episode 10 of RAS and 60. Maybe you want to open the show up for us?
Yeah. Thank you. Hello. Welcome to episode 10, season 2, RAS and 60. Today's episode, we're focusing on May being Mental Health Awareness Month, and in honor of Mother's Day, we're acknowledging one of Newark's eldest mothers, Miss Mary Carson. As always, we have another great show planned, so keep listening to us for sure.
Yes. All right, so let's go into COVID. So you want to remind everyone where they can get tested, updates?
Sure, you can get tested for COVID at any one of the testing sites in Newark. They're all posted on our social media websites, on Facebook as well. You can also go to the City of Newark's website and look at that stuff as well. And for the most recent numbers for our test positivity rate, you can tune into my live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yes. And housing. So let's talk about the Queen Latifah development project. She's one of the developers, right? Or her company is one of the developers, Blue Sugar Corporation.
Blue Sugar Corp.
Yesterday, you guys broke ground. So can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, it's a project that they are doing with young Latino developers here called Life Assets Development, and they are collaborating on building market rate and low-income housing up there on 19th Street and Springfield Avenue area. There's going to be all kinds of amenities in there as well.
Right.
And a whole commercial space for nonprofit organizations.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's going to be something.
And I know yesterday one of the remarks you made was that area definitely needs redevelopment, and
sure.
A lot of development is coming soon to that area. Additional.
Yeah. It's necessary. Been a depressed block for some time, and we, just getting ready to start like hitting these neighborhoods and doing what we need to do.
And can you explain, I know one of the things you also mentioned was that there was a young man killed there some years back, and you made sure that building was knocked down because you didn't want that area to be reminded for that negative thing that happened.
Yep. Those guys on those quads, they had the time when they usually do the bike off over there on Springfield Avenue.
Yep, on Mother's Day weekend.
Mm-hmm. We got to try to find a way to do that in a safe way.
Yeah.
And, they got into something and somebody got killed, shot right there, right in front of that abandoned property. We tore it down like a couple of hours later. Mm-hmm. And, that was like one of the first things I had to encounter. It's just incredible that Queen Latifah is building something there now.
Yeah, that's awesome. So this morning you had a book club meeting with some of the high school students from North Board of Education at the North Museum. Can you just give a little bit of elaborate a little bit on the book club and how people can sign up?
I thought that one today was incredible. Those kids are so smart. I mean, it was kids from all over the city that were represented there. And you can go to any one of the Newark libraries and grab the book Warmth of Other Suns that we're reading, or download it on Audible.
Right.
And we're listening and we're discussing that book. And those kids are very brilliant. So you can be a part of our discussion.
Mm-hmm. They are. I was into that conversation like, these kids are smart.
Yeah.
A lot. All right. So moving right along, let's briefly discuss the Guaranteed Education Program, which is a new initiative here in the city of Newark. Yeah,
it's an initiative that we started where we're working with EOF, the EOF program. We started at St. Elizabeth College first, College of St. Elizabeth, and we're going to try to move around to other universities and colleges as well. Where we really targeting kids that don't necessarily get an opportunity between 1.8 and 2.5 GPAs, who have had family members of themselves been victims of violence in the city, because that's usually a cyclical kind of situation, and we want to pull them out of that. And so with EOF pays for most of it, the city is going to pay all the gap financing. So ultimately, you'll be able to go to school 4 years for free.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a huge, just like a huge thing that the city is doing.
And if we're doing 40 kids at first, so 40, we just had 150 kids down at the TREC going through the interview process from every high school in the city of Newark. that fit that criteria.
That's awesome. Kids could graduate from college with a degree debt-free,
Yeah, debt-free.
That's great. All right, so let's talk about some trending news. So on 4/22, recreational marijuana sales began in New Jersey. It's now officially legalized. You can purchase marijuana anywhere in the state of New Jersey. And how do you feel like this will impact Newark?
Well, I think there's opportunity here that people have to take advantage of. There's opportunity into business. It's a growing market, billion-dollar industry that people could be a part of. And it's just not about the selling of recreational marijuana. There's always, supplemental kind of businesses that are attached to that help those businesses as well, whether you're doing transportation or media, security or any of those kind of things that support those businesses. You can also create an opportunity for yourself here. And we have to flood this space and make sure that we benefit from it, because the people who probably should make sure you benefit will not. So you have to benefit from it yourself.
Right, I agree, definitely. All right, so is there anything else you want to touch on before we bring in the first guest?
No, let's just get to it.
All right, then. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, do you want to go into introducing the first guy?
Yeah, the first guest, Dr. Juan Rios, clinical supervisor of our LCSW team, and Ms. Jessica Rodriguez. They are both senior social workers with the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery. They join us to discuss the importance of mental health awareness, the stigma often associated with mental illness in Black and brown communities, and a lot more. Looking forward to listening to these two talk to us today. All right. Thank you. Welcome to RAS and 60, Juan and Jessica. We're just going to jump right in, to May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and you both licensed clinical social workers. Yes. Just before we begin, you could give our listeners some background on who you are and what it means to be a licensed social worker, clinical social worker.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'll start off. Is that cool, Jess? All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having us, man. I appreciate the time. As Mayor Ross Baraka mentioned, my name is Dr. Juan Rios, LCSW, which is licensed clinical social worker. What does that mean? I can't talk about social work without talking about who I am and where I came from, the trauma that I've lived and existed that informs the work in which I now practice. And I take it from a liberation health perspective, that there's holistic practices that we must include, that we must also not only liberate ourselves from the internalized oppression in mental health, but the externalized oppression that exists structurally within the systems. So social work as a profession, as a practice, our core foundation is 1, human dignity and worth of the person, 2, our values and profession, and 3, also being able to look at the person as a whole and holistically. So that's just myself in a very short 60-second time frame of what social work is.
And my name is Jessica Rodriguez. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker. I grew up with my family on Dayton Street, and we saw a lot of trauma growing up. I didn't have the words for it when I grew up. Coming out as an adult, I was able to get the words to understand what was going around me, to see, okay, well, wow, this was substance use happening. This was trauma from violence. This was, a lot of macro level issues going on that were affecting our community, and just coming out as depression, as anxiety. So it affected me on a personal level, and I always wanted to come back, to the community to be able to help work with people one-on-one, or from a level to programming, so that way people get the help that they need, but with the faces that look like us in the community. So not only just me, but also just any of our Black and brown sisters and brothers that are out here doing this beautiful work. So I'm happy to also be here today, and thank you for having me and having Dr. Long.
Definitely.
So with the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery, can you just touch on exactly what that work looks like with that office? Like, what do you do with them?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm a senior medical social worker with the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery. A part of the work that we do is we work collaboratively with all of the different systems that's under the auspices of the Office of Violence Prevention. Specifically, our role, which is we're part of the VOCA team, which is the Victims of Crime Act team. So we really specialize on cases, individuals, families who've been directly impacted by trauma. And what does this mean? So if there's a survivor of gun violence, it not only affects that person, their families, it affects the neighbor next door who says, oh, did you hear about what happened to so-and-so last night? And what happens to those children? Well, how do they feel about what happened to so-and-so last night? But who are thinking about those children next door? Not just the two parties impacted from the event, but it impacts the entire community. So when our outreach team goes out after, whether it's a rapid response team goes out or our outreach team goes out, they make sure they ask these specific questions about wellness. Because then now, this is where we come in. And we're able to follow up with the families and make sure that they immediately have the therapeutic services so that the impact of that trauma is not prolonged. And that's what we want to make sure that when things happen in our communities and violence and crime, it impacts us all. And mental health, what's interesting about trauma is that it doesn't manifest today or tomorrow. It could manifest 2, 10 years from now. And we want to make sure that we're able to respond quickly with having very, very little red tape to access these families who are impacted, so we get them the help that they need immediately.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm more on the forefront with a lot of stuff, so I'm seeing the families a lot. I'm talking to the families. I support Dr. One, a lot of initiatives as well, from that macro level, but I just got off the phone, just a couple of minutes ago, prior to being here, with a family that needed help with, their relative who ran off because of Alzheimer's and needing support and community aspect of that. So, it could look different from the day to day, but, we're at these different levels to help in whatever way we can, and even to support the staff to do it, because our staff needs support as well, to be able to navigate a lot of this stuff as well. But Dr. Wan, pretty much wrapped it up very well with what we do. And it's a blessing that you, Mayor Baraka, put this initiative out there and have this department here, because this work is definitely needed. It's a privilege to be here and do this work.
So just a little data that was kind of troubling that I read. 40% of folks living in urban city have a higher risk of depression, 20% more anxiety, a double risk of schizophrenia, in addition to more loneliness, isolation, and stress. Can you explain why it may appear that people who live in these communities have to struggle more with balancing their mental health?
Absolutely. So let's get right into that. Let's look at the data. 1 in 4 individuals have a mental health challenge. So if you look around this table, we're struggling with something. 1 in 8 individuals have a serious mental health diagnosis. Now, this is that's just general data, and you layer that onto the data you just mentioned. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about how economically disadvantaged folks, let's take it for that one layer. When we live in urbanized communities that sometimes are often economically disadvantaged folks are marginalized historically. Those historic ladies that are on there, we're talking about how does the social determinants of health impact that individual's wellness, education, built communities, access to treatment, trust is another one in our communities. I mean, we think about Black and Brown communities, let's be honest, that help seeking is also determined by the level of trust I have to the medical providers. And as history has shown, there's a disconnect there. These spaces haven't been built for us. How many of our providers actually look like us and are culturally relevant to understanding what's going on within not just urbanized communities, but more nuanced communities as Black and Brown communities. And those levels of trauma, economic trauma, food access, family dynamics that exist. And then you layer that with the impact that this has, as I mentioned earlier today, about whether it's gun violence or violence in general in my community, and that impacts when I go outside and I have this level of stress that exists about what's going to happen to me today. Where am I going to eat? Who's my support system? What is the social capital that exists around me that's there for me, that can take care of my children while I have to look for a job? I mean, all of these add that level of stress that many of the communities don't have that level of those nuances that they don't have to deal with.
Right, and then we talk about taking it from that level to think about the impact of stress on our body, not just our mind, right? Because people often think that, oh, well, you feel depressed or you feel anxious, but then how stress and how trauma also impacts our body, right? So then we even see it going beyond that, impacting people with their medical conditions that they come about. So we see higher rates of diabetes, hypertension, amongst other medical conditions, because of a lot of these macro issues that are coming down. And I think our mayor has a great understanding of these things, especially with the initiatives that he's putting out with the guaranteed income programs and revamping a lot of the social programs within the community to address these things from all different avenues and not just in one way, which is, in my opinion, is not even seen a lot, So I give thanks for a lot of that support as well, because our people need that support from not just us doing counseling and saying, hey, how are you? But also, hey, you know what? Here's some, jobs, through, NorthWorks or here's some job, here's going on, here's, some ways we could support you economically. So that way, and then, we could have people have more on a holistic approach to healing, right? Because that's what we mean by holistic, right? Mm-hmm.
So with what you were saying about like statistically and with how trauma affects people years later and things like that, you often see people turn to substance abuse or alcohol and things like that. Mm-hmm. So what are some ways people can, sometimes that behavior is taught, right? Mm-hmm. That addictive behavior. So what are some ways people can, or children or teenagers can, what can they do to try not to fall into that habit that they've been taught on how to deal with their trauma, which is some people just don't talk about it. Some people just kind of just self-medicate, in different ways. So what ways would you, either one of you, suggest for young people who want to break out of that cycle of trauma?
So I'll start off and I'll just add a couple points. And Jess she's really a master when it comes to the mind-body experience. I would love to hear her thoughts on that. Mm-hmm. But let's take a step back for a moment in regards to, why do I turn to these substances? Mm-hmm. And that's because, we don't want to feel. We want to disassociate. Mm. We want to disconnect. Mm. So where am I disconnecting from? Am I trying to disconnect from my environment, from my family system? Mm-hmm. So we cannot look at mental health as this one isolated component of this person's wellness. It's saying this person in the environment in which I am. Because if I need to disconnect, this is the only coping mechanism I know, then that becomes a challenge, because I don't want to feel, I don't want to be here anymore. So we begin to shift the perspective of that built environment, so we have hope and belongingness. Those are two major components. I want to make sure I clarify this. When the number one combatant to depression is hope. Okay. The number one combatant, and then you have gratitude, number two. Okay? This is what research has shown. Okay? Most people have hope, have lower levels of feeling depressed. More people, you have gratitude, lower level of depression, you see. Now that we know that, now let's implement what are the skills and strategies that young people can do. And I firmly believe that we have to implement more social emotional learning, social emotional intelligence in the school system.
From early age.
In the school system. This is where they're spending most of their time. And when their home environment doesn't have that learning system, then we just expect that children who don't have childhoods to then become men and then become women, but they were never children, you see. So Jess, I would love to hear your perspective about those specific techniques.
Right. And I'm glad that you brought that up as far as like ways that we could integrate, more of that emotional intelligence even from an early age in childhood, and even programs for more rites of passage, along the way, so would be very beneficial. I would have even benefited from those things growing up, and I know the men around me as well would have. And so, as far as like things that people can do, practical things that they could do. Obviously, if we're addressing these macro issues at the same time, because those things have to be addressed, we can't just say go meditate and you still got the gas bill as a stressor, right? So thankfully, we have these programs out here that are also going to be helping people, and that's what I also meet people in that practical way as well. Let's see what's going on. Let's address these basic needs first, and then let's get to the other stuff after a while, right? Because I'm very much so from that basic understanding of like, let's handle and tackle those basic needs first, and then get to it. So, what I say for people, if they can do it, right, is to first start off with your day. First thing that you do, express that gratitude, right? Gratitude for whatever it is that you're grateful for in your life, right? And trying to take some type of, how can I say this? The first thing that you should do is looking at what you're putting into your mind, right? And what you're putting into your body, right? First thing a lot of times people do is open up their phones, scrolling through social media, and you already got hit with like 50 or 60 different people's messages and advertisements. Let's move away from that and look at what we're putting into our body. What are we listening to, right? First thing in the morning, are we listening to something inspirational? Are we listening to something that's affirming us? What are we putting into our body? Are we automatically putting the first thing into our body, food, processed foods, or are we drinking water? Like I tell people, like the best thing you could do, and obviously talk to your own doctors given your own medical conditions, but let's start by breaking our fast with breakfast, with water, with fruit, right? Things that are going to be nutritious, so that way we can have the ability to be able to focus and to have that energy to do the work that we're going to do. So, and throughout the day, looking at what that looks like. And obviously, movement of the body in some type of way. I know you hit the gym. I've seen you at the gym. It's great. I've even been there to see you. It's like whatever type of movement we can get in our body, whether it's the gym, whether it's dancing, which is why I love our culture in Newark. The kids automatically kind of know that. That's why, they're drawn to dance. That's why they're drawn to fitness, right? And maybe this may be a little bit taboo depending on how anyone has with their belief systems, but whatever your spiritual practices, don't lose sight of what it is that helps you when nothing else seems to click, right? So what can you go to for support when you don't have the answers, right? To drive you forward. There are so many other things that you could do as far as like mindfulness things that we talk about with meditation, even with mental, practices that you can do. Reach out to us for counseling if you would. We're over at the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery. We could go more in depth with that because it's personalized depending on the person. But rest is the last thing I will say. We bypassed a lot of times the importance of rest. And I don't mean just sleeping, but a lot of times we have this checklist of all these things that we should do, and our culture, it is the system that we're under a lot of times, gives us a lot of affirmation to be productive all the time. What are we producing? Productivity. And that's fine to a certain extent, but then we're also human, right? We also need to step back, and we need to also rest, replenish, and that process, and validate that way that, if I have to rest this entire weekend so I could get back, on the lines on Monday or Tuesday, then this is going to be worth it than spreading myself so thin, and I'm burning the candle at both ends, and I'm burnt out at the end of the day. And what value can I give to somebody if I'm not replenished, So we have to start to encourage people to rest, and then that's why we have a team, right? Dr. Juan, if you're not here and you need that break, I'm gonna fill in, right? You know what I mean? So we have to be able to rely on one another in that way. But those are the things I'll say. There's obviously a lot more.
So one of the things you said was you mentioned social media. So can you talk about how that affects like adolescents and teens, their mental wellness, and how? Because I know as a mom, like I had to take my daughter's phone because it's like she gets wrapped up in TikTok, and I'm like. And like I feel like when we were younger, we didn't have social media, so we had TV and we could turn the TV off.
And it went off.
So I feel like they can't. Well, one thing I realized is that they can't really identify what's real and what's not, or they don't identify the fact that they're being almost taught things with a subconscious, like without even realizing it.
Right.
And I just feel like as parents, that's something we need to be aware of.
Right. So, and I could touch on that, and Dr. Juan, I'll pass it over after you. But he brought up the social emotional part and wanted to implement that into the school and systems early. But one of the things that we've saw with research also is that when people are behind the phones, especially our youth, and they're interacting with one another, a lot of times they don't necessarily register the same way as if we were face to face when we were younger and we were able to read that, oh, he's sad,
right,
or he's he's anxious, or it's a lot lower, those statistics, the ability to be able to see and understand the emotions. So that's one of the things too. I'm not here to demonize social media and demonize the internet, because the next wave of wealth and for our future is going to be linked into Web3 and into technology. So there's going to be a use for that. And we can use those things as instruments, and our youth are so smart and they can navigate those things way better. My 5-year-old, knows how to do a lot more things with my phone sometimes than I do. And I'm glad that you brought up, the ability to us as parents to be able to navigate that space for our kids, so that way we can structure it in a way where they're not getting themselves involved with things that are, not within their age limit to be able to consume. But as far as you said the impact of social media, like what we can do with it.
As parents, how important it is for our to kind of monitor that or control
definitely
it for our kids' mental.
Definitely monitoring it. I like to put time limits on different things. So that way, like if my daughter wants to have some screen time, I give her some screen time. But then at the end, I also tell her, like, hey, before you get screen time, this is a privilege that you earn. So we're going to go out in nature, right? I'm always getting her outside as much as possible to be in touch with our environment, to be in touch with what's around us, because I know that importance of her to grow, with that in it. So I don't know, Dr. Juan, if you wanted to add anything else with that.
Yeah, I just want to really be concise with this, sort of bring up 3 points. One, it's the individual's first formation of their identity. So let's take consideration about child development. So one, how old is your daughter? And how much exposure of this mass information can she take in, and is she ready for that? Okay, that's the first thing, because based on child development, how they view their identity positioned against the other. If you're embracing all these images of what beauty looks like, and whatever that may be, or culture, or whatever culture is being imposed onto you, then it begins to shape who you are and how it positions in the life in which you exist. So being mindful of the developmental stage of that child. Number 2 is the FOMO effect, right? Which is the fear of missing out.
Right.
And constantly what happens with social media is that we're always saying, how do I look compared to Jessica? Jessica has just got her degree, and Jessica is now going to California. I wish I could go to California. I can't go to California. I gotta work, right? And then now you say, oh, so-and-so won this award. Damn, I'm not gonna won that award.
That's okay, brother.
I could have won that award, so why not me, right? And people who grew up around your same time frame, your age group, and you compare yourself. But what we gotta be mindful is to say, when that happens, send them love.
Yes.
Send them love at that moment. And when someone in your age group that's doing something amazing, rather than being your first instinct to say, why not me? Saying, word, I'm proud of you.
And understand that we have our own time.
My brother's doing this, my sister's doing this. Big them up immediately before that negative automatic thought comes into your mind. Because when that seeps in, then self-resentment moves in. And then lastly, last thing I want to say about this, because of Jessica, I love what she mentioned about, the Web3. The metaverse will be here. Okay, I'm lying, metaverse is already here. And what we have to be very mindful regarding our policies and how we construct and design these meta spaces that we also embed mental health access in these meta spaces. Very important. And very few are really consciously co-creating that within the metaverse. Say, oh, I could buy a yacht, I could buy these things in the metaverse and property. But what happens when there's bad actors that exist talking to your children in the metaverse, being able to access them and information about personal data, then what do you have in these meta spaces to help you cope at that moment? So the internet has been great in being able to destigmatize mental health and help seeking. Like you have Better Health, you have all these celebrities talking about mental health nowadays, which is fantastic. But we also have to embed a system within there where it's easily accessible to access mental health when you need it.
So I like the fact that you brought up the celebrities and talking about mental health and all of that, but they have access to all of these like high-paid doctors and
Wellness
therapists, and
For sure.
you know. So how young should people be to start doing self-care? And you know what should it look like?
Yeah.
Self-care starts, all right, so with my daughter, I could just be more personal. I've taught her about it since she was able to comprehend it. So for instance, with boundaries, right? A lot of times in the Puerto Rican community, people want to kiss you on the cheek and stuff. And I told her, I said, hey, if you don't like any of that, you can always say no matter if it's family or not. And she honored that, and some of the folks didn't like it. But that's all part of self-care too, because you're learning to listen to yourself, listen to what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And then they're able to build that confidence that I can assert myself. And you have to be mindful as a parent too that your kid is going to assert yourself. And it's going to be them practicing on you for a while. So we're going to be breaking some generational curses and trauma along the way. But to answer the question, it could start as young as you feel your child is able to understand and to do so. Even with like, instead of saying time out, with my daughter, I asked her, would you like, some time to yourself for your quiet time?
Right.
To be able to, to come back, with a different headspace, if we get, bumping together. So, but
I like that. So you turn it into something positive.
Right. As opposed, I had to think about it, right? I grew up, and I'm not gonna lie, right? We grew up with like corporal punishment type of stuff, right?
For sure.
So, and for better or for worse, right? But with my daughter, I saw certain things that I learned from growing up. And then I was like, okay, am I gonna go this route or am I going this route? And then from trial and error, I'm saying like, well, if I do this, she's not even learning the lesson if I went this route. So let's look at what other techniques can happen. And I hear a lot of my brothers in the community talk about, I got my ass whipped by my dad and how that was so traumatic for them. And they're healing from it now and able to have those discussions with their fathers if they're around. But looking at like wanting to do differently. So even my man right now, we have a son, and I just came off of maternity leave. He's 6 months old, and he's just taking the steps forward to just be present in the positive way, to kiss even our son, right? Because he wasn't even kissed, by his own father growing, because it was so stigmatized, right? So it's like those things are self-care too, and there's statistics that show kissing your son or child helps them to have higher self-esteem, and some even argue, right, that they would be even more successful when they grow up. So it's like these things we could teach our kids, to care for themselves at any age.
Yeah, I mean, and just to follow up with that very quickly is, when the question is, when does it start? And it starts from day one. It starts with me, because if I'm not okay, then the messages that I'll be sending in a dysregulated fashion, my body language to my child would then be imprinted onto them. So it's being able to model what it's like to take deep breaths. What it's like to slow down. What it's like to pray.
To say sorry.
To say sorry.
To say sorry as a parent.
Right, to set accountability. That's all part of emotional intelligence and resiliency. And that's the other part that I hope we get into. I'll pause there.
I was just going to say, it seems like to me, from just listening to you two speak, mental health is almost like the root of like almost every issue that you might face in life. You have to take care of your mental wellness, because it can manifest in health issues and all of that. So I just think that it's great for us to even have this conversation and focus on and have people make that aware that this is important,
Understandable. And then this is more than just, counseling. It's a lifestyle. So just like you have to eat healthy every day, you have to start implementing daily into your life things that you could do for your self-care, things that you can do for your mental health, because if you don't, just like you stop eating, you're gonna get health issues. Or you eat wrong, you're getting health issues.
Right.
So whatever it is that you need to put into yourself to practice it daily.
Right. Okay.
Well, we could have this conversation.
We could. Like, we can keep going for a good hour or two. Because there's so many topics that fall under the mental health umbrella. And how it affects people. And especially now, like, the fact that it is becoming more trendy to be aware of your mental health and to kind of like acknowledge it, but there's still a lot out there that people just don't know, you know?
Right.
Especially around this pandemic, it's probably made things worse.
Yeah, the pandemic.
For a lot of folks,
100%.
Isolation really affected people a lot.
Yes.
And kids too, young people.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. And I'm glad you mentioned the pandemic because that's really where I wanted to sort of touch upon regarding mental health because what research is also showing, they're taking a lot of data based upon communities that had a harder time sort of bouncing back psychologically. And what they found that there are some common traits of those communities that they didn't have such a harder time psychologically. And one is those communities that were already prepared. So what we mean by preparedness is saying that if something happens to me tomorrow, who do I go to in my community that I can check into? And not just relying on government, forgive me, but you can't just be government everything.
Sure.
There is community that exists. So before there was government, there was community. So if there is another pandemic, because there will be, we have to be prepared about how we as a community begin to come together and regarding our resources and pulling each other for resources and psychological support, because those who were most affected were those who were most disconnected and unprepared and felt even more isolated and even more alone. And that continued to further, because they didn't have access to a nice backyard where they could sit in a lawn chair.
Right.
Yo, absolutely.
Right? That's the reality of it. So let's think, how do we design that already in our community in preparation for the next one? And that's something that we have to be mindful of, that when we think about self-care, it's a community-wide design. It's not just
beyond the individual.
I. It's okay, all right, so on Clinton Street, where can I go if there's a pandemic where I can have some safe distance space where I feel like I can work from out there? Like, where is it I can go on my block, on my community? Who could I rely on when these things occur again, that the built community environment supports collectiveness and belongingness, so I don't feel so isolated and don't go down another slippery slope.
Yeah, we got to start bringing this to an end.
Yeah, so we get. I mean, every little question opens another door of like information. I'm like, we could do this all day, but we would love to do it all day. We gotta wrap it up soon.
You're great.
So, but thank you so much,
Thank you for having us.
Jessica.
Yeah,
You've enlightened us so much.
a lot. And I'm sure our listeners will benefit
Yeah.
tremendously. And what if they needed to get in touch with you or anybody? How could they do that?
There's many different ways you could go about it. Our Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery, you could give us a ring. And even, at the Shawnee Center, people could walk in, and, they could come up there.
West Ward.
Westward Victims Outreach, right? We're out there. We're definitely out here. And if there's anybody individually that needs any assistance, you could refer them our way. We could definitely help them out. So
There you go.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on our show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
No problem. All right. During the month of May, we often celebrate our Mother's Day is on Sunday, May 8th, 2022. On today's show, I wanted to shine a light on one of Newark's eldest mothers, Miss Mary Carson. She's a mom here in Newark and grandmother. We're going to have her on the show and speak to her and present her with some flowers because we want to give her flowers while she still can smell them. So she turned 91 years old, y'all. Welcome to RAS in 60, Miss Mary. We appreciate you being on our show. And I want to start by saying Happy Mother's Day early on.
Thank
and
you.
we want to give you some flowers here for being on our show. Hopefully you like them.
Ain't got no flowers on the wall.
Oh, there you go. Happy early Mama Day. Yeah.
Okay.
So you want to tell us, the listeners out here, this is people listening to us, a little bit about yourself? You know, how old you are, what's going on, you know, how you got here.
Well, I'll be 91 in May 16th, and I'm from Alabama. I was raised in Alabama, and I came to Jersey in 1953. And it ain't too much to tell, to tell you the truth. It ain't too much to tell, but living in Alabama is not really that much different than here.
Wow.
Only there's just more transportation and there's more peoples.
Yeah.
And there's more things happening. But it was okay in Alabama as far as I was concerned. Nobody bothered me and I didn't bother them.
Right.
But when we came here, it was a little different. More people jammed together.
Yeah.
And more crime too, because it was a store on every corner. And I don't know what else to say.
No, that you said a lot.
Yeah.
You said a lot. More people jammed together is right. So it's not the same amount of space.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody on top of each other.
Yeah.
Right. They wasn't breaking and entering down there. They doing it now a little bit, but
Yeah.
they wasn't. They ain't doing it like they is here.
Yeah.
People's hanging on the corners and stuff like that. And you raise your children. I never had any problem with my children. I had one son.
Right.
And I never had any problem with him. And grandchildren, what I did was with them, so many different things going on. So I played games with them. And whatever, like you could talk to them while you're playing the game.
Right.
And you could see where they're going and what they're thinking of, what they are thinking. And so that was my goal, and just trying to keep the kids out of the streets and playing games with them. They could just come up, Grandma, come on, we're gonna play games. And if I beat them, and if I beat them too much, and they act like they getting kind of upset and don't want to play, then I let them win. but I just kept on playing with them, and so until I could, so we still do it.
Yeah. So why did you guys leave Alabama and come up here?
Well, we wasn't having any problems down there. My father was a friend of a preacher, and he was talking about you could make more money here, and you could do more here, you could do more of that, and they got together, and I was married at the time, and my husband, they all said, yeah, we going, and so they came, and we came. They came, and then we came later. I came later. But that was it. That's the only reason we came. It wasn't because we was having problems or nothing like that, because I was all right down there.
How often do you go to visit Alabama? Do you go?
Well, we was having a family reunion every 2 years, but I haven't been down there in a while now. There's no transportation down there unless you have a car, and got to be in good condition.
Right.
And if it ain't in good condition, you in trouble.
Because it's just wide open space.
Yeah, more or less. They took the buses off. No buses. And so that's just it.
So what did you do for a living? Did you work?
Yeah, we worked, where? Down there, up here.
Yeah, down here, up there.
Yeah, we worked like on a farm. My father farmed when we had a farm when we was real young, but then when we got old enough to work on the farm, then we moved to the city.
Right.
And we worked like when we would go out and help people work on the farms when they was gathering the crops.
Yeah.
But that was about all the work that I did while I was down. I didn't do that much work.
Yeah.
But when I came here, I worked at a jewelry factory, and then later on I worked at a cleaners, and I worked at the cleaners for about 35 years.
Wow.
And that was about it.
Wow. A cleaners in Newark.
No, it wasn't in Newark. It was in Kearney.
Okay, Kearney. Yeah.
So you know a thing or two about clothes and.
Yeah, the cleaning.
Okay.
Yep.
How many grandchildren do you have?
I have 4 grandchildren and 2 great-grands.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
No, 3 great-grands.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And besides playing the games, what you like to do for fun?
Well, I didn't do too much for fun. I just more or less stayed home.
Yeah. Like now, you just enjoy being in your own company.
Yeah, I go now more than I did when I was, when I was younger.
So you go out and take part in the senior events and stuff?
Yeah, I go to a senior. I go to Nettie Greer's.
Yeah.
And then I go, with the one on William Street, the same thing,
Right. Yeah.
I take part in that. But that's about it.
That's good.
That's good.
that's good.
What kind of programs do they have at the?
Well, they have some all kind, honey. We go to dinners. We're going tomorrow to a dinner. We go to shows and stuff like that. But we haven't been in a while, but on account of the COVID.
Right.
But we do a lot of things together.
That's good.
That is good.
Glad it's coming back, though.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's coming back.
What's coming back?
Well, that we get to be able to go out and you guys get to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I ain't talking about COVID. We want to.
No.
Yeah. We're trying to get rid of that thing.
Yeah.
You got any advice you want to give to like young people? What advice you give to these young people trying to raise their families?
They need to, well,
Go.
Well, I would just say that they need to pay, the parents need to pay more attention to the children. Like I did, I played games with mine. And like sometimes I didn't like the games, but to get them, like talking and saying what they want to do and you talk about things that because sometimes they won't talk about stuff you don't want to, to hear. And so, but if you keep on talking to them and don't like that, you can get through to them.
Yeah, eventually.
You be tired and everything coming from work, but take time with your children.
Take time
That's
with
some
your
good
children.
advice.
Because if you don't, they're going to be in the streets.
Because somebody else going to take time
They
with
sure
them.
will. They sure will.
That's great advice. Yeah, it is good advice.
Yep.
You got anything?
No, I think I'm done.
You kidding.
So I want to know, did you do anything different, like to be, everybody don't make it to 91.
And you were in your right mind.
And you look good.
You're talking, you make, like, what did you do?
Is it a special diet you got? What's
No,
going on?
I just ate at home.
Oh, that's good.
You don't eat out.
I ate food at home. I cooked my food and I ate it at home.
I know that's right.
And I didn't like my grandchildren. They didn't bother about going to the movies or nothing like that.
Yeah.
We just played games.
So home life, mental stability.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that there's a point about eating your own food in your own house.
That's right.
Because we eat out a lot.
I eat out a lot now, but I didn't.
Yeah, we do, kids especially.
Yeah.
A lot of McDonald's,
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. And all this food is processed.
Yeah.
Right.
They said, well, this is good, but it's been processed.
Right.
And then you grew up on a farm, so you had really organic food. The original organic food.
Uh-huh. My mother had gardens and, oh, boy.
Yeah, we just don't know how to do any of that stuff
Right.
anymore. We're so far removed from that farming. Yeah.
Have you ever lived in the country?
No, I visited down south with my family.
What
But
part?
in North Carolina.
Oh.
Yeah, North Carolina and South Carolina, yeah. My family, my father's family is from North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they all live down there. And you're right, there's a lot of space.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they ain't had no farm though.
No.
That must have been something growing up on a farm. That must have been something.
Yeah. Well, I didn't exactly grow up on it, to tell you the truth, but
Yeah.
I did work on it, so I guess it's about the same thing.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. You was there as a child. Was animals or more like
Gardens.
It was animals, gardens, and most everything.
Yeah. It was your father's farm, or was he sharecropping?
Well, I think he was now that he was sharecropping when we were younger.
Right.
But when we got old enough to work, seemed like he left the farm and moved into the to the city, more or less, like.
Yeah.
And we did go out and help. You know,
Right.
like other people, my uncles and things had farms, and we was going out there working and working on the farm. That we wasn't getting no money, but then we found out later that my father and them was getting the money, but we wasn't getting.
No, somebody was getting money.
Right, somebody was getting paid.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you came on with us. Anything you want to tell our listeners?
No, just take care of your children.
Take care of your
Because it starts at home.
It definitely start at home. You definitely need to take care of our
Because if you
children.
let them go, they will go.
Shoot, most of them gone running around here.
Take up time with them.
That's great
Talk
advice.
to them.
Well, we thank you for coming on with us. You know, we wanted Mother's Day is coming. We wanted to be able to bring you up and say Happy Mother's Day to you. May 8th is the Mother's Day, and
Happy early
give you
birthday.
some flowers. Happy early birthday, 91
thank you.
years old. Hopefully God will bless me so I can be 91 and still look good and move around and talk just like you. I'm gonna start eating at home more. For sure.
It'll do it.
For sure.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for coming on our show. We appreciate having you. We want to take a picture. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
This is for the culture.
All right. Thank you for listening to our show today. And you can follow our City of Newark's Facebook page at facebook.com/City of Newark. On Twitter, our handle is at City of Newark NJ, or you can follow our Instagram account, City of Newark NJ. Also, follow me on Twitter at RasJ Baraka, on Instagram at RasJ Baraka. You can also follow my Facebook page at facebook.com/RasJ Baraka. And thanks again for listening, and please share this episode with your social circles. Remember to use the hashtag RasN60 if you'd like to ask me questions or make a comment about what you've heard on the show today. Post your questions to social media using the hashtag RasN60. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Maya Angelou. God bless y'all. Take care.
Nurture the style and it's growing. That's right. This is poetry in motion. That's right. And we gon' keep it in motion, just like the ocean. Float like an MC, bringing you this dopeness. This is for the culture. That's right. The vendors of the fly, and you know it. That's right.